Hello everybody, welcome back to the T.O.A Podcast. I am your host, Onvermel, here again with Zack-Ta.
Hola, compadre.
He does not speak any other language than English, so ignore him.
And even that I do pretty poorly.
I speak half a language, thank you very much. But today, we're actually, don't worry, we're actually going to have a bionicle discussion today.
Oh, we are?
One that I think that's actually going to have stuff to discuss.
Is there now?
Useless masks that may not be as useless as one may think.
Any mask if you try hard enough.
Well, it's like, at least particularly in combat situations. Because this is the thing
use in combat, not use in a mock. Okay.
Yeah, not mock full usefulness. That's all completely subjective. But no, especially like when you're younger, especially like the original 6-2, for example. I remember thinking that the Galley's mask was the lamest because not only did it look different than the rest, but especially also underwater breathing. I'm like, that's boring to play with.
Very few scenarios would require you to go underwater.
Which is weird because 3 of my T.O.A I had that as their extra mask, and I never played any game where they went underwater. So to me it was just like, this is pointless. Because of course, as a kid, I was just playing battles and such, my idea of useful masks: strength, shielding, speed, flight. Levitation doesn't actually fly. And I realized, at least with some discussion, that some masks can be more useful than one may originally think.
The number one contender for this? See in the dark.
Yes, simply after we were building one of my mocks, we were having a discussion about this.
Indeed. The Ruru, as it's known, allows the wearer to see in the dark.
Basic, maybe useful. It's like, okay, in tunnels, yeah, cool.
Basically,
tell me, how in a combat situation can see in the dark make you more powerful than me, huh?
See, we always thought it was like, we can see in the dark. I can see in tunnels. But when you think about it, let's just say, maybe you're hunting someone in the dark, say at night, maybe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
As, maybe a bounty hunter.
Visualizing, yes.
Night vision can be very handy in, tracing people. And if they cannot see in the dark, a significant edge to the user.
Yeah, especially, if you're, this is the thing I think I kind of, for most of the histories, I don't think about bionicles at nighttime, for whatever reason. I think that comes down to this fact that my brain forgets that bionicles have beds. And
there's daylight, and then there's caves. Nothing in the middle. That's
pretty much, it's like, also you play Monog, there is no nighttime. It's just you're underground or you're on the surface. And visual media, you rarely ever see night. But, have you ever just been outside when it's have you ever been outside, camping, where there isn't streetlights or stuff, and just realized how dark a forest is, and how impaired your vision is, and how much more careful you are?
It kind of cracks me up because I just picture it all in the dark.
Yeah, it's weird. But, if you end up finding someone in the middle of the night, being able to see in the dark would give you a huge advantage.
You could run through a forest without any hesitation.
This is the thing this should all be very obvious and self-explanatory.
Of course, when we say see in the dark, we mean basically night vision, not your mask lights up like the Mask of Light.
Yeah, we're not talking about how it's portrayed in Legends of Metro Nui.
That's one of the stupidest,
I mean, that's probably just because the movie makers decided...
what's the word I'm looking for? Just artistic decisions they made for the movie.
But the movies, all of them have a little bit of artistic, so you can ignore, so you can kind of mostly just ignore that. But, like I said, it should just be an obvious thing they can think about as oh, yeah, this is, what's it called? Obvious that you could be more useful in a combat situation. But like I said, I never really thought of it like that. And also one mask that is way more OP and overpowered that I think a lot of people give it credit for is one that you were playing a long time was, the Faxon. Or the Leatherneck.
Yes. So everyone might think that the Mask of Gravity, forgive me if I can't remember the technical
the Gravity, that's obviously OP.
Everyone knows this is... The wearer of the mask was aware it was OP and got bored with it. But the Faxon is so overpowered in the sense of it allows you to mimic traits of any animal. Granted, it might be limited to your biome, or at the very least the Taraga version is, which means you can breathe fire like a dragon.
Because
you can be immune to poison like a certain type of fish.
The big thing about it is you go, okay, so you can mimic any animal, right? Yes. In a real world setting, alright, that doesn't seem too overpowered, right?
Given that every venomous creature in history in the world probably has one animal that's immune to add poison.
But it's okay, maybe it's just very helpful, right? But then you get to any sort of fantasy setting, and Bongo's Billy is you look through the Rahi book, the amount of different abilities some of these Rahi have.
The very
For
fact
example,
Rahi have abilities.
I believe it's the second or one of the first 3 Metronui books has a Rahi that lives in the archives that can shapeshift into anything and mimic their powers.
So
I
if
think
you know the existence of this creature,
So I'm just saying, if that
Lazarus
guy's a
can
Rahi,
shapeshift.
he can shapeshift into anything. And also with that, there was also a thing where it's like, as you said, breathing fire. Yeah, he can do that too because there are dragons that can breathe fire. And if you really want to get into it, Kitongu's also technically a Rahi. So anything Kitongu can do, he can do.
Vizorak are also Rahi. So Lazarus can make
So
Vizorak.
there's a question. Can the Lezvik, if he's mimicking a Vizorak, be able to have a spinner come out of his back?
I wouldn't call that an ability of the Rahi. I'd call that more of like
A physical
Armament.
attribute. A physical
I
attribute.
was going to say armament. That is definitely the question.
But still,
they're very.
but the point is, if Lezovic bites you, can he inject you with Hordeca venom?
And that is where the rule of the fact set is very dubious. On paper, it sounds great. Oh, you can mimic animal traits.
I do think that being limited to your biome is a good
Still, like, okay.
and knowledge.
Can
of
you?
them.
Obviously, knowledge is helpful. You have to know this
No-
creature's.
Knowledge.
Then again, I don't feel like Hallie knew. I think she just assumed. Like,
Well,
I hope-
Hallie's is a person who lives by the water, so she probably has pretty intimate
assuming
knowledge.
they have those fish in her waters.
She was, I would say, she did end up becoming a chronicler too, which means she was probably a very curious
If
person.
you
to
never
know
knew
about
the
stuff.
animal existed, though, can you mimic that animal?
True. Like I said, I haven't read that
The
part of the
ocean's a
book where she
deep
had
place.
to.
It just says there's a fish that she could have assumed there was a fish. It's like, well, I hope there's a fish. Gosh dang it, I was right. I am alive.
It is a very open-ended.
And like, what does
mask.
it mean by an animal's traits?
Yeah, that's where we basically go into power sets of animal, basically, rather than
If it basically just means you can acquire immunities an animal would have,
because also
and sounds an
I
animal
would
can
say
make,
the limitation is you can't take physical attributes.
obviously.
So also you can't grow wings and fly. However,
Which means the Bionicle universe leaves the door wide open for a ridiculous amount of stuff.
because if you could change your physical attributes, but then again, Clack can shapeshift, so can he shapeshift?
That's not a physical attribute, that's a power.
But it's like
But he
it
can't-
changes your physicality.
I want to say you can't do that one because it's an effect.
Like I said, I would limit it to basically your body cannot physically change, but if there's any like abilities, traits, then that works.
But that's still overpowered because most masks have a 1 or 2 kind of settings. This grants him multiple abilities.
This is where it's like, okay, this mask needs to be found to basically have, because in that case, this mask can work as underwater breathing.
Yeah.
It could probably work as see in the dark.
Yes, because amphibians can breathe.
This could probably even work as invisibility, because I bet there's a Rahi that can turn invisible. If you go through all the Bonka lore, I bet you find one.
Yeah, it's called chameleon effect.
I'm thinking like actual invisibility, but chameleon effects, yeah, that works too.
Basically the same thing.
Well, one is transparent and one is I'm just camouflaged. Those
You're
are two
still
very different
invisible
things.
to the other person.
Yeah, but one you can kind of move around a bit more than the other. But essentially, the idea that where is this hindered? And that's the thing is also when they're designing the power in Gregor's Writing, they never really put the limitations on it. They never went too crazy with it. So it's like, well. But again, that's an example of basically a much, much more useful mask than
pays to do your homework.
and even like the Mask of Light to some degree is way more useful than one thing because one of it is basically it can like
Again, night vision.
well, it's a giant flashlight if it wants to be, but also it sees the good in you, which I believe it also helps to basically, at least I believe on the CD of my Roxy had where it was talking about the Kanohi Evoki, where it was saying that it can basically any tense situation like it can help basically fix like the idea of I think the mask
In other
was
words, it's
supposed
a
to be
great mask of diplomacy.
exactly. So it's like if someone's just being irrationally like let's say like it's something like a Skakti, right? Who might only attack you just because they're irrationally annoyed at you. It might be one of those few masks that actually might be able to be like, I can actually take care of this, just easy
Probably
peasy.
gives you instinctual knowledge how to deal with certain people.
Well, it gives you the power to basically see the light inside of someone else.
Yes, but like it helps it,
Basically, it gives you the Mr. Rogers
what's
of a
that?
mask.
this to break up a tense situation. I know that's not the
But yeah,
technical. I feel like it would give you a somewhat instinctive like how to deal with this particular.
I feel like
individual.
may give you basically.
Like, okay, he's like, okay, this is Skakti. In order to deal with Skakti, you have to act aggressive back.
I don't think it gives you that maybe.
No, you wouldn't like be like. You're just like. I feel like I need to do
I don't think
this way.
the thing is, I don't think it necessarily gives you knowledge about how to deal with stuff. Basically, more so shows you the good in them, the light in them, and that then if you know how to use that towards and it might basically just make it easier so that if you're trying to explain something to someone, I don't know. Like I said, it's dubious and it's hard to say exactly how far that mask can go.
Most masks are somewhat dubious.
Now, if you want to think about a mask that is still, I would say, as useless as ever, the mask of translation. Maybe. Although, as
it's
the great version is proven, if Arahi's at least got its own language in the form of kicking out, because not that they just communicate, they actually have their own language, which is why I think Camel was able to talk to them.
I just assumed it allowed you to talk to animals, because it's not the only instance where they had that.
I feel like
Utron used the T.O.A with that mask to communicate with some kind of burrowing animal to figure out the meaning of some pattern they were digging.
So basically,
they can talk to animals.
That mask can talk to them.
Just some animals are more intelligent than others.
So it might be easier to communicate with others than the other ones.
Kikanoa are just smart enough and reasonable enough to communicate in that, but yes, communicating with animals is helpful. Not necessarily in a battle if you don't have time to say, hey!
The T.O.A version sounds like the book, The Mask of Reading.
It's the mask of reading.
I'm going to sit on the couch and read a book.
And the other one's the mask of understanding.
That's
what you're saying.
But I mean, a lot of I would say the Metru Mask, when they basically made him into, or the T.O.A Mask, when they made him into great versions.
They had to add
They all got power buffs. Except really Wanua's. It's still just see in the dark.
He could see through walls, which seems silly because we had X-ray vision.
I feel like the only reason that's canon
it's if you look in...
I said the only reason why I believe it's probably canon is because they put in the movie and everyone's just kind of like...
Hard to hand wave that
one. It's really hard to hand wave that, so we will keep it in.
But I choose to ignore that as far as I'm concerned. Well, obviously the great virgin turns into a flashlight so other people can see in the dark. No, that's silly. That's just, you can see in the dark. Nothing to...
It's...
Turning invisible is turning invisible.
When I was thinking about masks in general, and basically things that could be more useful than originally thought, I was thinking about the Miru. Now, the Miru is just a mask of levitation, right?
It's the mask of up and down.
It's a mask of levitation, right? Now, because Lee was a master of air, a T.O.A of air, he can basically move himself around.
Control himself to pull the air to push him forward.
However, I had a thought where it's like, okay, the mask of levitation might be more useful than they think. Because my thinking is, if you get yourself a running start, get enough momentum, and then activate the mask and jump up, how much of that momentum are you keeping going forward?
I mean, also you're counteracting gravity going down, but you're still having the friction of the air, so you would slow down and stop.
But how much extra, basically?
You would basically be like, jump buildings and single bound.
Because, like, the thing is, like, look this way, I'm like, obviously Leo could go over a chasm of a great, canyon, right?
He can push himself
with air. But if you had a good enough running start and use the mask, like, how far do you think you could get?
You also got to remember, being in the air would be similar to being in the water. You could probably paddle yourself forward, though it would be very tedious.
Well, you could, but I mean, also air is a lot thinner, and one thing that slows you down is just gravity itself.
But you counteract gravity.
But like I said,
have the friction
basically, if you just don't have gravity, how much of friction air would slow you down? I need a scientist to do this one. That's the thing. Like,
it's not space. You would slow down.
You definitely would slow down. I'm not saying that, but I'm thinking how much it would slow down. That is the question. Could you jump?
I don't know.
Could you jump? If you had levitation, could you jump a canyon? Do you think?
Of course you can, because you wouldn't fall, so you could slowly propel yourself forward just by farting.
No, no. But that was like one of the things I was thinking is like mask of levitation. At first I thought it was more of a mask of flight. Then I went back and realizing it was just a mask of up and down. And now I'm thinking, okay, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. You can probably...
It's up and down.
I think it is said that I can give you very mild...
I believe that's the great version. It allows you to...
Well, yeah, the great, because who cares about the noble version of the Mask of Levitation? No one has that.
No, the Nuva? The Nuva version. That's the one that allows limited flight.
Well, limited flight...
They had to upgrade
the levitation, I think, could probably float a little bit. You know, kind of like a balloon. You know,
I mean, you catch a wind current.
So you're saying the Mask of Levitation, all you need to do...
The Mask of Sailing.
Okay, now what I really want to do is... I now want to make a T.O.A with a levitation who is not air, who has like a fold-out, like, sail.
Levitation?
A T.O.A with a levitation, who isn't a T.O.A of air, who's basically got like a pop-up sail on his back. So or he's got like a wingsuit or something.
So the Ben 10 guy with a mirror.
No. Don't talk about Ben 10. We don't talk about those things. But the whole flying squirrel, wingsuit sort of thing, elytra, whatever it is your sort of
Cup of tea.
exactly, any sort of cup of tea in it. And of course, the earliest sort of thought of basic useful masks that are more useful in combat situation, specifically the Akaku Nuva, or any of the Nuva masks that can affect your movement. Because all the Nuva masks basically allow you and other users around you to basically have the power. So if you're fighting a Akaku Nuva and he decides to let you have a scope zooming in, have you ever played a video game where you all of a sudden accidentally scope in by accident? That is disorientating.
Yep, that.
And especially if you're not expecting it. So any of the T.O.A, so the Akaku Nuva or any of the T.O.A Nuva who have the Akaku, that would be
if the How Nuva gave you a personal shield, that probably means you can't get out either.
But does the shield move with you? I think the shield does move with the bear.
Exactly. So it's nothing can get in, but you can't get out.
That's a good question. Does T.O.A Nuva's shield allow him to attack through it, or is it just because in the comics and the movies, you never see him attack through the shield. It's pretty much, okay, we're safe in here.
It's basically his mask could create a shield that can encompass multiples, but if it's like all the other Nuva masks, you can give other individuals that power.
But it's
which I'm really starting to question. Do they have to be trying to use the mask, or is it completely against their will?
See, that is the big thing, is do people have to be aware of it? And that's one of those details that just isn't explained. But if you ask Greg, well...
Don't ask Greg, we got too much explained.
Plus, he wouldn't probably answer that anymore.
He can't legally answer that anymore.
But I feel like he'd probably be they would have to be aware. But just the idea that, until it's been confirmed one way or another, if you got a Akaku and you're fighting someone, and you decide to be I'm trying to start to disorientate them. Or even just with speed, they're running at you, you dodge out of the way and they zoom into a wall, whack!
Charge, I'm running, Griffin!
So all the Nuva masks are very, very much OP. And I think there's another one where it's that could really affect you. I think it was the Cow Nuva actually, because I think what it does is basically gives you gills rather than makes you
filter
a pocket of bubble, pocket of air. Or something.
I don't know how it ever supposed to work.
Because I'm pretty sure the regular cow does have a limit of how long you can be underwater before you have to surface.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So it seems like it more gives you an air supply, while the cow Nuva seems like it more so either gives you a gill-like function, or just filters it. I'm not sure which one.
I always like to think that the cow was, it just allowed you to breathe underwater. It just filtered the air.
But the thing is,
basically it's like wearing an air tank on your face.
But now a question: if the Cow Nuva works in the way that it basically works as, you
say
now
it
have
works.
gills. I don't know which one exactly. But if it does the way basically now the bear basically essentially has gills, use that on someone on the surface.
Because for some reason gills can't breathe normal air.
Not in the same way a lot of has to do, at least depending on what kind of gills you go for. But again,
all gills.
I just like the idea that just with the Nuva masks, you can just really mess with people, just if you can basically get them to use it. Which I feel like wouldn't be the most difficult thing, because if you're in a combat situation, there's a good chance, and if you're fighting someone who has a mask, that they might try to use their mask, but if you're basically trying to make them use your mask, that might be that kind of loophole where it's to some degree. At least to some degree. And at least with some of the older masks, a lot of them were more, I would say, day-to-day useful, dealing with Rocky, which is why I would say any mask that came out after the first 3 years are all very... There's not very many useless masks, I would say, in later years.
Yeah, I'm really thinking
Well, okay.
I mean...
Okay, don't get me wrong. Inika Halley, that is pretty useless.
It's not as useless as I first thought, because it does allow you to see people using a mask of invisibility. Which can be useful.
Or...
No, that's how she sees Matoro. It allows her to see Matoro and people using Mask of Concealments. So it's not as useless as I thought.
Okay, so what I like to think is that when people get the mask, they know about the mask of I can see spirits, I can see invisible people, and then what's this weird ping noise?
What's this weird ping?
Why do I keep getting this heads-up map display?
I keep getting that sound Jala says he gets in the Murray form with his mask of sonar. Ping!
Basically, the fact that it's a mask that basically allows the user to find the mask of life,
Yeah,
seems
life this time.
like such a, especially like if it wasn't a mask, if it was a mask that they came across and found rather than just being given randomly by Korzani.
No. This is a mask that's got to be like locked away. Like, you need this mask. Why? We're not really sure, but you're gonna need this mask.
Or it's like maybe when they were at Korzani's island, they found this one mask locked up in his basically personal chambers, where it's like they were looking for Likon's mask, you know, try to get that back, and they found that next to it and go, we should take that.
I mean, how do we know that was her mask? I mean, when the Red Star zapped him into T.O.A, maybe he was like,
I mean, it's possible the Red Star, okay, upload the program.
Oh, we've had this one. We've had this buffered for a while. Let's load it up.
It is generally a mask to me that just seems very, I don't know. Very convenient.
Way too convenient.
Then, like, maybe if I read the books, it would be like,
I mean, it
there's
kind
something
of...
I missed, but...
See, it's like, it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it's like...
Now, if it worked as Jack Sparrow's compass, where, you know, direct you to what you want most...
What you need...
Then I'd be okay with that, you know,
because the need is depending on the situation. And you only need the Mask of Life if the universe is dying.
And so it's like, I'd be okay with that.
I'm sure it's going to be a nice little retcon. You know, be like, personal headcanon.
I'm not completely above personal headcanons.
It's not... It can lead you to the Mask of Light, provided that's what you need. And you know, it would actually make the mask a lot more interesting. Like, I need a sandwich.
It directs you to your fridge.
2.5 miles that way. By the tone of the headache.
I kind of like, I can just, you know, you're walking right to the mask of light, then all of a sudden it changes direction. Crap, I lost the trail. Why? 1 second, I use the bathroom.
You actually would never get lost, because if it's based upon headache, you activate the mask, and you're like, okay, I'm getting a blistering headache. Now, we're in the right direction.
The question is it by what you want most or what you need most? Like,
I think what you need.
Is it like what you consciously are thinking about you want, or is it what basically deep down inside you need?
If this is the mask that gets you the Mask of Life, it has to be what you need. Because anyone could want the Mask of Life. The Paraka wanted the Mask of Life. Makuta wanted someone else to find the Mask of Life.
I mean, in fairness, he was just a floating ball of gas at that point.
No, he literally wanted someone else because he can't use it. He had to get Matoro to use it. He wanted the T.O.A to find it. He just had to make sure they found it at the right time, at the right moment, and used it and whatnot. That was the worst part about his plan, is how much it hinged on the exact timing.
Well, you know, when you have, you know, a few thousand years to plan out, it's
nice to know a giant robot is like, you know,
let's be honest,
can be revived a few moments after.
There's probably a reason why Makuta went to Maxio's body to speed it up a little bit, maybe. He's like, you guys are taking too long. You're not in pace. I'm going to help you a little bit, Matoro.
Matanui has to die, but he can't be dead too long. There's a short window of resuscitation.
I like to think there was like about a year-long window that he probably could have done it with.
I was going to say, I wonder how Makuta got from Marinui to the head so quickly, but right, Makuta can teleport.
Yeah. Speaking of Master OP, and you perform a teleportation mask, which
not
it's
really.
Like the Olmec is okay. It's just a great mask. How is that not a legendary mask for power? I get the idea of the legend masks are the combining forces of the universe, life, time, and creation. I get that, but it's like the Olmec can really go to alternate reality. So unless in the Bond universe, getting to another reality is not that difficult.
It's not even hinged on if you've been there before or know where you're going. Unlike the Mask of Quick Travel, which is like limited teleportation to what's invisible sight, and I might be confusing this with Nightcrawler to if you can visualize it in your mind.
I think it works with the quality as well, whereas if you can visualize your mind, you can, and
but
it's short enough
clearly
distance.
Risky. But it's basically, I can see that mountain range over there. I can be on top of that mountain. That's a reasonable teleport.
Yeah, I don't mind it.
Thank goodness they said there's only 2 Olmecs in existence. Why the heck the Brotherhood of Makuta even lives in our universe to do their plotting is beyond
because
me.
They tried going to another universe, and that Brotherhood of Makuta kicked them out.
Pocket universes, my friend.
I like to think that there is unspoken side effects to using the Olmec if you use it. Like, I like to think that
we don't know where we're going to end up.
Like,
can we get back?
They only made 2, and it's like, I really do feel like there are probably some major
at the very least,
downside.
The Olmec should have been like the Evoki, where it's like, yeah, only 1 was ever made. And it nearly killed Artaka to do it.
And there's the reason why Brutaka is such a powerful being that he can actually wield it.
Yes. Also, on the thought of the original topic, the Mask of Truth. That's a useless mask in a battle.
In a battle?
Knowing whether your enemy's lying to you when they're trying to come at your throat.
The thing is, battles people don't talk enough. So, but if you can get a monologue, it could be useful.
I think it might also be like Hallie's mask that might be able to see invisible people, but that might have just been the... And that's the thing. I just like the really boring mask might actually have a second power.
Because they're boring enough.
That's better than the main power.
I would say this. Now, the Mask of Truth, I would say would make very cool characters outside of combat. Because if you had like a Bongo story that was more detective oriented. So I think there's like a show called Lie to Me.
Possibly.
Where the guy can pretty much always like the whole thing is this guy works for the police. Basically, you can tell if people are lying by their facial movements and all that sort of stuff. Like that. And I'm like, that's a pretty interesting story. So I'm like, you apply that to Bionicle, boom. The thing about the Mask of Truth is one of the few masks that came out after 2001 that 100% generally feels like a Turaga mask power.
Indeed, no comment.
And I have it on a Turaga, and I'm just like, it feels like a power a Turaga would have to basically.
It even kind of has the look of a noble mask.
It actually just has the feel of an 01 mask, like aesthetically for a lot of it, in my opinion.
Granted, I always thought it did bear resemblance to the Ikaku, so the small mouth, the round.
It would make a decent noble Ikaku, except
obvious
it doesn't have a scope. But it's like it is one of those masks where it's like, okay, definitely useless in combat, but now that I'm older, it's like, okay, this could be interesting. Funny thing is, the one character I have it on, pretty sure does not use it in the slightest, because I'm pretty sure is a pathological liar, or at least he's the most basically think of it. His whole shtick is that, well, a wise Turaga once said this, and it's like, okay, maybe he just spouts
out nonsense and claims a wise person said it.
Pretty much, he's the
a pathological.
He's a self-appointed Turaga of his island, which is an island of just random
pathological narcissist. We'll call it
something that is like the one person. Of all my Chronicles, the one person who has the mask is someone who probably doesn't use it and is known for lying, which to me is just. Kind of makes me just chuckle a little bit.
That's how you know I'm telling the truth. I've got this mask. I don't think it works that way.
Now, the other masks that... So, I'm thinking, because the Unica mask, of course...
Let's be honest. The Vahi is useless.
The Vahi is...
It doesn't travel through time. You can barely slow down time. And what does slowing down time do other than make things take a little longer?
I have a very strong feeling that the Mask of Time, they specifically didn't give as much power because they were like, you know what, if we do anything more than just speed up or slow down, it would make it very quickly...
Don't get me wrong. In the Bionicle universe, when you have a plan that's going to take 1,000 years to erase Matoran's mind or something, I'm assuming that's what it was, be able to speed things up a little... Certainly nice.
But this is the thing
but not necessary.
The Mask of Time was built by the Camera, right? Out of it's a legendary mask that you basically
built in a cave out of scrap.
But basically, look at this way: it's only been used twice. The Camera used it once. T.O.A used it once, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's my question. How do we know it can't do more? They both struggle to barely slow or speed up time. Then I'm like, how do we know it can't do more?
Okay, we need to give this to someone like Brutaka or Makuta to see what the true power of the Vahi.
Where it's but also I do think, at least in the early concepts of Gen 2, I recently learned that basically, early concept, the idea was that it was supposed to be an alternate reality, where the Vahi basically had more to do with it. So I think if Gen 2 was originally going to be basically an alternate reality of the Bionicle where events happen differently, the Vahi was going to have a bigger part with it, which is one reason why I think the Vahi gets referenced a little bit. And then it's the idea, and honestly, Gen 2, the whole idea that there might be the top of the mask and there's a bottom mask, the full mask is split between two universes, two timelines, and that's why you can only speed up and slow down because it's not a complete mask. I love that.
Unfortunately, the only way to connect the two masks is... Well, actually, there's a way to connect. We got the LMAC. We can travel to both.
And it's just unfortunately, Gen 2 never fully went that way. but it kind of...
Well, we don't know. They didn't get the opportunity to go that way or not.
Exactly. So it's just like, yeah, no, that's one of those masks where it's like, though you're in combat, if you could actually use it without basically hindering your abilities, yeah, be able to slow down other people would be very useful and speed up yourself. Cool, okay. But as a legendary mask, it's like, it does feel like it, but the thing is also when it's cracking and bleeding, it's like it's destroying the time-space to continue. And I'm like, it really does feel like the Mask of Time has other abilities that just haven't been discovered yet, in my opinion. Like, I really genuinely think it can do more.
I would have given LEGO so much credit if Gen 2 did get a Mask of Time, that was the top half, that was legitimately compatible with the original.
That would have been the greatest thing ever.
Especially since, you know, the original mask attached at the mouth. The Gen 2 mask attached kind of like at the eye level. Which means they actually could have been compatible, like, for either or.
I've seen people make Shapeways designs where it's basically adding the two, either two separate parts, one meant to connect with the other or such. Is there actually
art for the top half?
Yep.
Okay.
There is.
I'm sure I've seen it.
And that's where everyone went and looked. That looks like the top of a mask. Because it's like, yeah, it does cover pretty much the full face, but it's like, it distinctly has way more top than bottom. And it's just like...
Unlike the Va'i, which had a lot more bottom
and again, it was also orange, and it's just like, hold on a second.
Oh there, brother. Something's going on over there.
But like I said, Gen 2 really did... They had the Temple of Time. You had all these Easter eggs to the Mask of Time. The Mask of Time gets mentioned. It's just like... And with learning about basically what the original origins of this universe could have been in the early concepts, it's like... I can see this, and
as you see none of it in the show.
I mean, that show you can't see nothing of anything. We don't talk about that.
You never see, yeah, you just see the same thing. Except Umar Hunter, that was cool.
I mean, he was actually pretty
Makuta
decent.
was done mostly right.
See, now you want to talk about Mask, that's just sad, it's,
The Krakan.
The Krakan sad?
Oh, I said Makuta, so I thought that's where you're leading up. Granted, is it really that useful when you have 52 or 46 or something powers?
I mean, when you have so much...
Including the powers of that mask. But, I mean... Yes, the Gen 2 masks. Well, their elemental power.
I mean, it's not a bad idea.
Was it really that hard of a concept for people to understand? This is my power. This is the mask that gives me another power. Was that really difficult for people to grasp?
I mean, I feel like it came down to just the whole simplifying thing, which
don't get me wrong. There's something to be...
I still don't know how I feel about it.
I'm not fully opposed to the idea that I don't have any powers and the mask gives me powers, hence the purpose of the mask, but I'm like, nah, I'm okay with there being two. I'm not upset that they did. It's just the power was not fire, was not shielding, it was fire. Like, this is the mask of fire, but it looks like the mask of shielding.
I mean, I like the idea that wearing the mask unlocks your elemental power. I kind of like that idea.
That's fine. Not a problem with that.
But at the same time, it's just kind of like... I kind of like the mask powers, but at the same time, it's like I can kind of see why they would want to maybe power down the heroes so they're not quite as powerful, maybe. I don't know.
See, when you have heroes with powers, the obvious solution is to make villains with even more powers.
Hmm.
Like Makuta.
Yeah, we see how well that went. Where once you learn they had these 42 powers, you just kind of look and go.
I mean, that's like overthinking a concept. I'm thinking Tohunga Makuta, just a pure entity of evil.
Oh, also going all the way back to talking about masks and mask powers. My question is, mask of speed, right?
Kakama, yes.
Does it only work with like running, or can you just punch quicker? This is the question.
I assume it speeds you up.
But it's like, does you have to be kind of like, is it like specifically more so I can run fast, mask, or is it sort of my body itself can just be fast? So can like...
I'm going with run fast, but if you run fast in a circle, you can punch a guy a lot.
But you have to be running to acquire that punching speed.
I think this mask might be more of it speeds you up, but I feel like it's hard to just focus it. It's designed to make you run fast, so I feel like you can channel into your arm. Like, when you're running fast, you can punch fast.
Well, yeah. That's obvious, that's
See,
just
the nice thing about the original masks is they were pretty simple. They didn't overthink it. This gives you a shield, this allows you to see far and through walls, this one makes you breathe underwater, this one makes you go up and down, this one gives you strength, this one makes you run fast. Nothing more to think about.
Yeah, I mean, depending how much you want to, unless you want to nerd into it too much. Because I would say it's like, the Mask of Shielding, it's like, you could always, nitpick, like, really start digging into the minute things.
Like, what kind of shield is it?
Is it a bubble shield?
Is it like a deflection of things coming towards you? Is it like an actual bubble around you? Or is it more like, when you're paying attention, you can just block, things just stop at a certain distance?
Is it an instinctive?
Well, it's not instinctive. You have to concentrate on all these. That much is given.
Yes.
But I would say the Mask of Speed, because it's called the Mask of Speed, you speed up. It's the Mask of Running.
I mean, I like to believe that. So, Bonko nerds.
But if you want to make someone punch real fast, I'm not going to say no, you can't do that, because clearly there's not... I don't have a Kakama. I can't say what it's like. I mean, I do have a Kakama. I've got lots of Kakamas.
We all have lots of Kakamas.
I wear a Kakama. I just never use it.
Yes.
I'm wearing a Kakama right now.
True, he is. But, anywho, we're past the 30-minute mark, so I think I'll be ending here. Thank you all for listening. This is actually a pretty fun one. Nice Bonko nerd discussion.
Not a lot of useless masks when you think about it.
No, but there's always a couple. And so yeah, if you guys like the video, you can like and subscribe, and we'll be retiring from the night.